You can't tell me that this wasn't watercolor, but I'm gonna tell you, it wasn't watercolor. It was actually my Staedtler marker that I drew down, and I just put a wet brush over it. Now I had a cup of water and an actual acrylic brush. You could use a water brush, as in like the ones where you can actually fill in water and squeeze out over it, or you can use a watercolor brush. This right here was with my Papermate Flair. So basically what I did was that I colored, I drew in the shape that I wanted to, then I went in with my wet brush and I just painted over it. Now you can call it painting, but I'm literally just applying water and swirling it how I desire. Now what I did for some parts was that I made the outline heavy and then I just carried over the excess to a new spot, and that's how I would make colors. Right? So that's how I filled in the middle without actually having to draw in there. So those are two of the examples of the things that I used. Then I used this Crayola Super Tips. I used this one in an older, not an older work, but in another spot. So, this was actually a mix of, this is when I first started using my Papermate Flair, and then the black, it was actually mixed with the ink. So I had the water left over from this drawing, and I had mixed it and see if I can kind of blend it and get some tones there. This one was with only this Super Tips. So I drew it in marker and then I colored it in marker, and I just did layers, applying layers all the way through. And this is a mix of the Super Tips. This is like a really cheap Crayola. And then this one, my Papermate Flair. And then this purple flower right here is actually my Crayola marker. And this is something that you can find anywhere. At the dollar store, you can find them at your local CVS. And so this one, what I did instead, I practiced. So I colored in one direction. You can kind of see. And the lines that were the least prominent were in areas where I painted perpendicular to how I drew. And so this is just practicing. This one is I started off with a few layers of gray, then I did a blue outline, and I kind of did what I showed earlier where I colored in one spot, put water over it. So this has a fair amount of water. You can kind of see it dripping off the handle. I had a fair water, work it, and then I applied it somewhere else completely. So now you're gonna see that this blue right here is more vibrant than the other eye. I'm gonna put it on the other eye just for consistency. But that's how I worked color in different areas. So this is where I first thought of it, and then I went back and I did it over here for this one. Because I figured since this paper was already done for, since I had all this, deleter white. No, this was the water Sharpie test. I was like, more water on this paper isn't gonna hurt nobody. So that's what I did instead, and it's been good so far. It's been good to know. I want to try it out on highlighter to see how it reacts. I'll put down some highlighter and some water, and let's see. Oh, it does work. It does. It's not as pigmented, but it makes sense given that the source isn't as pigmented. Now we can tell right away that this was actually not ink. I need to go back to a picture I actually inked, but it's good to know that you can do a little bit with highlighter. It's just not gonna be as vibrant. Don't bother with ballpoint pen, because most ballpoint pens are actually waterproof. Not by design. I don't know if it's by design. So we have this ballpoint pen. It's a big round stick. Here we have this circle, and then we'll put some water over it. For the most part, nothing changed and nothing picked up. It's actually the surrounding paper. So all in all, it's good to know that you don't have to buy expensive watercolors, especially when practicing. It's so much better to get the technique right, like for example layering and doing light and shadow with these, and then you can upgrade to a different medium. Or if you're just ever in a pinch and you feel like using watercolors, it doesn't even have to be a whole budget thing. It can just be an accessibility. If you have markers, you can find yourself some water. And if you can find yourself some water, then you can get art done. Maybe what would happen if I just did this in water? So we have this angled brush right here. And we're going to be careful with it because I don't want to ruin any of this. And look at how much it already picks up on here. I want to go perpendicular to how I colored. So I colored horizontally. I want to put the water perpendicularly. That way it'll erase the lines. So you can see the lines where the marker streaks. That's what I'm trying to get at. That's what I'm trying to reduce or make an illusion of not being there. Instead, what what I find is that this is just picking up the pigment onto the brush versus spreading it around. It's also been some time, so this dried up too. So that would make sense since the other ones I did relatively recent. It hasn't been that much time since I put the put the pen down and when I put the water for the other ones, whereas this one has had a fair amount of time, so it's not as blended as the others. Another thing to note is that there are actually a lot of layers. So it may have blended the top layer and not the ones underneath. So that might also be something to note. I'm just gonna paint it off here. It dyed my... You saw the brush was white before. Now it's just all purple. I'm gonna just let this soak. But we know now two things, that it works best with put down marker and layers as you go.